I'll be honest, when I first heard about Hellish Quart, which for the record was only yesterday when a friend tipped me off about it, I was so excited to give it a try. Hellish Quart is hailed to be the most realistic, physics-based sword fighting game ever made. It's available right now to try in early access on Steam, but before you go rushing off to throw money at them, stick around. I have a few thoughts on whether you should buy it now or wait. I also have some thoughts on what I'd love to see as the development expands. So, as I said, I was very excited to give this a go. It reminds me of an old game called Bushido Blade on the PS1. The realistic sword combat where one decent blow can put your opponent straight out of the fight. This kind of realistic combat makes every engagement feel tense. The reality is that one wrong move can see you out of the fight or even flat out dead in moments after the bout begins. Do you rush in and try and get the first stab, or do you back away and wait for a counter attack? You can use footwork and positioning to your advantage. There are clearly pros and cons for each weapon type. A sabre versus a rapier, for example, is at a clear disadvantage while at distance, but if you manage to close the gap without being run through, you'll have a much easier time of it. You can literally button bash your way to victory, but as you learn the different attacks with each weapon, you can begin to string together combinations to keep your opponent on the back foot until they make a mistake or their guard is exhausted. While up close, each character has the ability to throw punches, knees or sneaky kicks to distract their opponent. You can also go for grabs in the attempt to temporarily disable your opponent's sword arm and get a killing blow. Most fights I've had so far have been short, very short. Heartbeats of frenetic flailing at my opponent and either they go down or I do, or sometimes both of us. The problem is, right now the game is in early access and it feels very early, and it's incredibly rough around the edges. The bones of the game are there, and I love the physics-based combat and the one-shot death, the blood spatter and the tension, but there really isn't much else to the game right now. The multiplayer isn't an option just yet, it's a work in progress, so you can't go fight all your friends or start griefing people just yet. The menus look like placeholders really, and many things such as the character's move list and special moves or combinations just haven't been added in, so you're left with the option to simply figure it out for yourself while literally at knife point. Plans for the future of the game include more fighting styles and playable fighters, which can be seen on the character selection menu. There are 2 already which have been mapped out but aren't yet playable, and another 2 you can see ghosting around the edges of the menu. Multiplayer is of course a must, so work on that is underway. There is a story campaign in the works which you can see a teaser for if you buy into the early access, although how that will play into the main gameplay, given that this is a dueling game, is a little uncertain for me right now. Personally, I feel like the story, unless they really pull something out of the bag, is going to be a nice to have rather than essential. What will really pull people into this game is if they can make the multiplayer really hit the mark. There are also even more fighters on the way, more AI types for enemies and more arenas, etc. So the main issue with buying the game right now is that yes, it looks amazing and the concept is solid. If they manage to pull it off, then the game will be pretty unique and a total win for anyone into HEMA or fencing. The problem is that right now there really isn't much to it. I love playing around with the game, but honestly after about an hour I was bored and wanted to move on. I've done some sparring and played around to see how long I could last in the survival mode, which in essence is just one bout after another. Right now, with no multiplayer option to sink your teeth into and no story campaign to work through, there isn't much to do aside from mess around with the different characters, try out the different movesets, see how well you can defend or how quickly you can take your opponent down, figure out the pros and cons for each weapon, that sort of thing. On top of that, some of the animations are janky as hell at the moment and clearly need some time invested to really make them shine. What I would love to see added to this game alongside what's already on the roadmap is some way to incentivise players to keep playing. Now this is tricky I think. If you start to unlock health stats or armour types or even upgraded weapons, the risk is that you take something away from the base game. The beauty of this game is that it is brutal and the fights can be over in a matter of moments, where 2 really skilled players going at it could be going back and forth looking for a gap for ages and the match will only get more tense as time goes on. If you start adding in upgrades as an incentive to progress, it would need to be done in such a way that doesn't take away from the main reason we're playing the game in the first place. So what else is there? A leaderboard perhaps for bragging rights? A championship of some description? If this were to become an esport, I can imagine people practicing the game until their eyes bleed, but there will need to be some sort of incentive. Perhaps even cosmetic unlocks as you hit certain achievements, new costumes, weapon designs and different victory animations. As I said, the base game is there and it's impressive even though it's very rough around the edges at the moment. There just isn't enough to it right now. The main factor that I feel will be a turning point for this game is if they can really nail the multiplayer aspect. I can't honestly recommend buying this game in early access as it is right now, unless of course you are really keen to try it out or you want to show some support to the developers. But all that said, I'm really excited to see where this game goes. The game is likely to be in early access for at least another year and may release on next gen consoles after the launch on PC, so it's one to keep an eye on. I have some Hellish Quart gameplay to show you now, which includes all the sound effects and the quirky animations, so feel free to stick around to see how it looks at base level as I played my first hour of the game. Leave me a like and comment if you don't mind, sub if you're new, and I'll finally shut up and let you watch the gameplay. Here we go.